The wind on Kepler-7 never stopped howling. Jake Martinez pulled his thick jacket tighter as he walked across the metal walkway between the mining buildings. Ice crystals hit his face like tiny needles. He had been the supervisor of this mining station for 3 years now, and he still wasn't used to the cold dot. The station sat on a frozen rock floating in space, far from any warm sun. They were here for one reason. The blue crystals deep in the ice were worth more than gold back on Earth. Jake's job was to keep everything running smooth. That meant keeping 47 workers from 6 different alien species happy, healthy, and working hard. Jake stopped at the main office door and stamped the ice off his boots. The warm air inside felt good on his face. He sat down at his desk and looked at the daily reports on his computer screen. Production was good. No major accidents. The heating systems were working fine. It should have been a normal day. But nothing about what happened next was normal. Zara worked in the deepest parts of the mine. She was a draconian, which meant she looked like the dragons from old Earth stories. But she walked on 2 legs like a person. Her scales were blue and green and caught the light like jewels. She was almost 7 feet tall and stronger than any human. Most of the time, she kept to herself. Draconians were proud people. They didn't ask for help. They didn't show weakness. They solved their own problems. That's what made them good workers in dangerous places, like the deep mines. But 3 days ago, something terrible had happened. The power had gone out in the living area where Zara kept her 3 eggs. For 6 hours, her babies had been in the freezing cold with no heat. When the power came back on, the eggs were like ice. They should have been warm. They should have been moving. Instead, they were still and silent. Zara had taken the eggs to the draconian medical officer on the station. He looked at them and shook his head. "Too late," he said. "They're gone. Nothing can be done." She tried the other medical officers from different species. They all said the same thing. Dragon eggs that freeze like this never hatch. The babies inside die. It was a sad fact of life in space. For 2 days, Zara held her eggs and cried. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She just sat in her small room and stared at the 3 white shells that held her children. Other draconians came to see her. They brought food and kind words. But they all agreed the eggs were lost. On the 3rd day, Zara made a choice that went against everything she had been taught. She wrapped her 3 eggs in thermal blankets and put them in a special carrying case. Then she walked out into the howling wind. The other draconians watched her go. They thought she was taking the eggs to the burial ground on the far side of the station. But Zara wasn't walking toward the burial ground. She was walking toward the human offices. Humans had a strange reputation in the galaxy. Other species thought they were weak because they came from a warm, easy planet. But there were stories. Stories about humans doing impossible things. Stories about them never giving up, even when everyone else said there was no hope. Zara didn't know if the stories were true. But her children were dead, and the human supervisor was her last chance. The walk to Jake's office took 20 minutes in the brutal cold. The wind tried to knock Zara over. Ice formed our scales. The carrying case with her eggs felt heavier with each step. Twice she almost turned back. Her people would be angry if they knew what she was doing. Asking aliens for help was shameful. But then she thought about her babies, cold and still in their shells, and she kept walking. Jake was reading a report about crystal production when his door opened. He looked up, expecting to see his assistant with more paperwork. Instead, he saw something he had never seen before. Zara stood in his doorway, covered in ice, holding a case against her chest. She was shaking, but not from the cold. Her large eyes, usually bright and proud, were red from crying. She looked broken. Jake had worked with Draconians for 3 years. He had never seen one cry. He had never seen one look weak or scared. They were always strong, always in control. But the creature standing in front of him looked like her world had ended. "Please," Zara said in her deep voice. The word came out. Rough, like it hurt to say, "Help me." Jake stood up slowly. He didn't know what was wrong, but he could see that something terrible had happened. "What's the matter?" he asked. Zara set the case on his desk with shaking hands. She opened it carefully. Inside were 3 white eggs, each about the size of a football. They were beautiful, with patterns like frost on a window. But they were completely still. "My babies," Zara whispered. "The power went out. They got too cold. Everyone says they're dead." She looked at Jake with desperate eyes. "But I heard stories about humans. Stories that say you don't give up, that you find ways when there are no ways." Jake stared at the eggs. He didn't know anything about draconian biology. He didn't know if frozen eggs could be saved. But he knew what it felt like to lose someone you loved. He knew what desperation looked like, and he knew that no parent should have to give up on their children. "Let me call our doctor," Jake said. "We'll figure this out." Zara's eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. Outside, the wind kept howling. But inside Jake's warm office, something was about to begin that would change everything for everyone on the station. A human was about to do what everyone else said was impossible. He was about to refuse to let hope die. Jake picked up his communication device and pressed the button for the medical bay. "Lisa, I need you in my office right now. It's urgent." Dr. Lisa Park was in the middle of checking medicine supplies when the call came. She was a small woman, with kind eyes and quick hands. Before coming to Kepler 7, she had worked in emergency rooms on Earth for 10 years. She had seen everything from broken bones to heart attacks. But she had never worked with alien medicine. "On my way," Lisa said into her device. She grabbed her medical bag and ran through the corridors toward Jake's office. When Lisa arrived, she found Jake standing next to a tall draconian female who was crying. On the desk were 3 white eggs that looked like they were made of pearl and glass. The eggs were beautiful, but something was wrong. They should have been glowing softly with life. Instead, they were dark and cold. "This is Zara," Jake said. "These are her children. The power went out 3 days ago, and the eggs froze. Everyone says they're dead." Lisa had studied some alien biology in school, but not much. She knew that draconian eggs needed steady heat to develop properly. She also knew that freezing usually meant death for most living things. But Lisa had learned something important during her years as a doctor. She had learned that usually and always were different words. "Have you checked for any signs of life?" Lisa asked. Zara nodded sadly. "The draconian doctor used our scanners. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no movement. He said they died when they froze." Lisa opened her medical bag and took out a small device. It was a human bioscanner designed to detect life signs in human patients. "May I try with this?" she asked. Zara looked surprised. "That's for humans. It won't work on draconian biology." "Maybe," Lisa said, "but maybe it will pick up something your scanners missed. Different technology sometimes sees different things." Lisa held the scanner over the first egg. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she saw something that made her heart jump. A tiny blip on the screen. So small, it was almost nothing, but it was there. "Jake," Lisa said quietly, "look at this." Jake looked at the scanner screen. He didn't understand all the numbers and lines, but he could see the small blip. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure," Lisa said, "but it might mean there's still life in there. Very weak life, but life." She checked the other 2 eggs. The second one showed the same tiny blip. The third one showed nothing at first. But then, Lisa adjusted the scanner settings. There it was again. Weak but present. Zara stared at the scanner like it was magic. Are you saying my babies might be alive? Lisa was careful with her words. She didn't want to give false hope. I'm saying there might be something there. On Earth, we have cases where people fall into freezing water and their bodies shut down to almost nothing. Sometimes we can bring them back if we warm them up slowly and carefully. But these are eggs, Zara said. Not people. True, Lisa agreed. But life is life. And if there's even a small chance, shouldn't we try? Jake was already thinking like a supervisor. What would you need? Lisa thought about it. First, I need to learn more about draconian development. How do the eggs normally work? What temperature do they need? How do the babies grow inside? That information is private, Zara said automatically. We don't share biological secrets. With other species, the room went quiet. Lisa understood. Every species had secrets they protected. But secrets wouldn't save Zara's children. Jake sat down across from Zara. I understand about secrets, he said. Humans have them too. But right. Now your babies need help. Dr. Park is good at saving lives. She's saved human lives, and maybe she can save draconian lives too, but she needs to know how to help them. Zara looked at her eggs, then at Lisa, then at Jake. Everything in her culture told her to keep the secrets, but everything in her heart told her to save her children. Normal temperature is 98 degrees, Zara said slowly. The eggs need to stay at that temperature for 60 days. Inside, the babies grow slowly. First the heart, then the brain, then the body. They need steady heat and steady energy. Lisa nodded and made notes. What happens if the temperature changes? Small changes are okay for short times, Zara explained. But big changes or long times in cold can stop the development. If development stops too long, the baby dies. But what if the development doesn't stop completely? Lisa asked. What if it just slows down so much that it looks like stopping? Zara had never thought about that. I don't know. That's not supposed to happen. Lisa smiled. In my experience, life finds ways to survive that aren't supposed to happen. Jake stood up. What do you need to try helping them? Space in the medical bay, Lisa said. Power for heating equipment. And time to set up a controlled warming process. The medical bay is yours, Jake said, and you'll have all the power you need. But the mining operation, Zara said, taking power from the mines will cost money. Your bosses won't like that. Jake looked at the 3 eggs on his desk. Inside might be 3 baby dragons fighting for life. Some things are more important than mining quotas, he said. He picked up his communication device and called Carlos Webb, the station's chief engineer. Carlos, I need you to reroute power from mining sections 7 and 8 to the medical bay. Full climate control and life support. That's going to shut down a quarter of our mining operation, Carlos said over the device. I know, Jake replied. Do it anyway. There was a pause. Okay, boss. But corporate isn't going to be happy. Let me worry about corporate, Jake said. Lisa was already planning in her head. I'll need to research everything I can find about draconian biology. And I'll need to modify our equipment to work with their physiology. Whatever you need, Jake said. Zara looked at both humans with wonder. They were risking their jobs, their money, and their reputation for her children. Children that everyone else said were already dead. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for us? Jake thought about the question. Because that's what you do for family, he said. And everyone on this station is family. For the first time in 3 days, Zara smiled. Lisa spent the first night reading everything the station's computer had about draconian biology. There wasn't much. Most alien species kept their medical knowledge secret. But she found enough to understand the basics. Draconian eggs were more complex than human babies. The shells could change thickness to control temperature. Inside, the babies developed in stages that had to happen in the right order. If one stage failed, the whole process stopped. The more Lisa read, the more she understood why everyone thought the eggs were dead. Freezing should have stopped all development completely. But the tiny life signs on her scanner suggested something different was happening. At 3 in the morning, Lisa had an idea. She called Jake even though she knew he was probably sleeping. "This better be important," Jake said into his communication device. His voice was tired. "I think I know what's happening," Lisa said excitedly. "I've been reading about human hypothermia cases. Sometimes when people freeze, their bodies go into something called suspended animation. All life processes slow down. So much they're almost stopped, but not completely stopped." Jake sat up in his bed. "You think that's what happened to the eggs?" "Maybe. If the eggs went into some kind of suspended state instead of dying, we might be able to wake them up. But it has to be done very slowly and very carefully." "What do you need?" "I need Carlos to help me modify the medical equipment. And I need to test my theory." The next morning, Carlos Webb arrived at the medical bay with a toolbox and a confused expression. He was a big man with strong hands and a quick mind for solving problems. He had been fixing things since he was 5 years old. "So let me understand. This," Carlos said to Lisa, "you want me to turn human medical equipment into dragon egg warmers?" "Basically, yes," Lisa said. "I need precise temperature control. The warming has to happen in stages, just like human hypothermia treatment." Carlos looked at the 3 eggs sitting in a specially padded container. "These little guys are really still alive?" "I think so," Lisa said. "My scanner picks up faint energy signatures. Very faint, but consistent." "All right," Carlos said, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's build something impossible." They worked together for hours. Carlos rewired heating elements to create gradual temperature zones. Lisa programmed the medical computers to monitor the eggs constantly. They built a chamber that could raise temperature 1 degree at a time while watching for any changes in the life signs. Zara stayed with them the whole time. She didn't understand the human technology, but she could see how hard they were working. Other Draconians came to watch, too. Word was spreading around the station that the humans were trying to do something that had never been done before. "This is foolish," said Keth, the Draconian medical officer. "You're wasting time and resources on dead eggs." "They're not dead," Lisa said firmly. She showed him the scanner readings. "Look at these energy patterns. They're weak, but they're there." Keth looked at the human scanner with doubt. "Our equipment is more advanced. If there was life, we would have detected it." "Different equipment sees different things," Carlos said. "Sometimes old-fashioned human tech picks up stuff that fancy equipment misses." By the afternoon, they had the warming chamber ready. It looked like a clear box with heating coils and monitoring wires. Inside, the temperature could be controlled exactly. "The theory is simple," Lisa explained to everyone gathered around. "We start at the current temperature of the eggs, which is about 40 degrees. Then we raise it 1 degree every hour until we reach normal draconian egg temperature." "That will take almost 60 hours, Zara said. "Yes," Lisa agreed. "If we go too fast, we might shock the system and kill whatever life is left. Slow and steady is the only way." Jake had been dealing with angry messages from corporate headquarters all day. The reduced mining production was costing money. His boss wanted explanations. "Martinez, what's this about power being diverted to medical experiments?" came a voice over his communication device. "We're attempting to save lives," Jake replied. "Lives? The reports say you're working on dead eggs." The reports might be wrong. There was a long pause. You're risking your career for this. Jake looked through the window at the medical bay, where Lisa and Carlos were carefully placing the first egg into the warming chamber. Some things are worth the risk. The warming process began at exactly 4 in the afternoon. Lisa watched the monitors like a hawk. Temperature rose slowly. The scanners showed the same faint life signs, but nothing changed. Hour after hour they waited. Zara sat beside the chamber, talking softly to her eggs in the draconian language. Lisa had read that developing babies could sometimes hear sounds from outside their shells. Other station workers started stopping by to check on the progress. Humans, draconians, and workers from other alien species all became interested in the experiment. Some thought it was hopeless. Others hoped for a miracle. Why do humans do this? Asked Vex, a worker from the insect-like scrawl species. Why try impossible things? Because impossible is just another word for difficult, Carlos answered while adjusting the heating coils. On the second day, something changed. Lisa was checking the monitors when she saw it. The life signs in the first egg were getting stronger. Not much stronger, but definitely more active than before. Jake, she called excitedly. Come look at this. Jake ran over to the monitors. The energy patterns were more complex now. Instead of flat lines with tiny blips, there were small waves and curves. What does it mean? Zara asked, pressing close to the screen. I think it means the warming is working, Lisa said. The life processes are speeding up. The baby is starting to wake up. Word spread quickly through the station. The impossible experiment was showing results. Workers who had been skeptical started believing. Even some of the draconians who had criticized Zara began to watch hopefully, but Lisa knew they were still far from success. Getting the life signs stronger was just the first step. The eggs still had to finish developing. The babies still had to be strong enough to hatch Dot, and they still had 54 hours of careful warming ahead of them. This is just the beginning, Lisa told everyone. We've got a long way to go. But for the first time since the power failure, real hope filled the station. The humans had done something that everyone said was impossible. They had brought dead eggs back to life. Now they had to keep them alive. On the 4th day of the warming process, everything changed. Lisa was checking the monitors at 6 in the morning when she saw something that made her heart race. The first egg was showing strong, steady life signs. Not just the tiny blips they had seen before, but real activity. The energy patterns looked like a heartbeat. Zara, Lisa called softly. Come see this. Zara had been sleeping in a chair next to the warming chamber. She had not left her eggs for more than a few minutes since the warming began. She jumped up and looked at the monitor screen. Is that? Zara couldn't finish the question. A heartbeat. Lisa said with a big smile, Your baby has a heartbeat. Zara started crying again, but these were happy tears. She pressed her hands against the clear walls of the warming chamber. Hello, little one, she whispered. Mama is here. Within an hour, the second egg began showing the same strong signs. By noon, all 3 eggs had steady heartbeats. The warming process was working better than anyone had hoped, but their success created a new problem. Amanda Foster arrived on the morning transport from corporate headquarters. She was a tall woman with cold eyes and expensive clothes. Her job was to make sure mining stations made money, not spend it on impossible projects. Amanda walked into Jake's office without knocking. Mr. Martinez, I'm here to investigate your unauthorized use of station resources. Jake had been expecting this visit. Ms. Foster, welcome to Kepler 7. Would you like some coffee? I would like an explanation, Amanda said coldly. Mining production is down 25%. Power usage is up 30%. All because you're playing doctor with some dead eggs. They're not dead, Jake said calmly. Would you like to see for yourself? Amanda looked surprised. See what? Jake led her to the medical bay. Inside, Lisa was adjusting the warming chamber, while Zara watched the monitors. Several other workers from different species stood around, all watching the displays that showed 3 strong heartbeats. These eggs have been frozen for a week, Amanda said. They can't possibly be alive. Lisa looked up from her work. The monitors say otherwise. We have clear life signs from all 3 eggs. Amanda studied the displays with doubt. This equipment wasn't designed for alien biology. How do you know it's working correctly? Carlos peered from behind the warming chamber, wiping grease from his hands. Because I built it to work correctly. These readings are real. Even if that's true, Amanda said, this experiment is costing the company thousands of credits per day. Mining operations must return to full capacity immediately. No, Jake said simply. Amanda stared at him. Excuse me? I said no. We're not shutting down this project. Mr. Martinez, I have the authority to remove you from command of this station. Jake nodded. You do. But I'm not changing my mind. The room went very quiet. Everyone understood what was happening. Jake was choosing to risk his career to save Zara's babies. Amanda looked around at all the faces watching her. Humans, Draconians, and other aliens, all waiting to see what she would do. This is highly irregular. So is bringing dead eggs back to life, Carlos said. But we're doing it anyway. That afternoon, Carlos made a discovery that changed everything. He was checking the thermal crystals they were using to heat the chamber, when he noticed something strange. The crystals were not just providing heat, they were vibrating at a very specific frequency. Lisa, Carlos called. Look at this. Lisa came over to see what Carlos had found. He was holding a scanner over the thermal crystals. These crystals are putting out energy waves, Carlos explained. Not just heat, but actual frequency vibrations. What kind of vibrations? Lisa asked. Carlos checked his readings again. The same frequency as draconian brain waves. I've been reading about their biology, and this frequency matches their neural patterns perfectly. Lisa's eyes went wide. You mean the crystals are not just warming the eggs? They're stimulating brain development. Exactly. That's why this is working so much better than normal warming would. We're giving the babies exactly what they need to grow. They ran to tell Zara about the discovery. When they explained what the crystals were doing, she looked amazed. That frequency is sacred to our people, Zara said. Mothers sing songs at that frequency to help their babies develop. But I thought that was just tradition. It's not just tradition, Lisa said excitedly. It's science. The frequency actually helps brain growth. Carlos was already thinking ahead. If we can tune the crystals to produce stronger vibrations at exactly the right frequency, we might be able to speed up the development. Is that safe? Zara asked. I think so, Lisa said. It's what would happen naturally if you were singing to your eggs. We're just making it stronger. They spent the rest of the day adjusting the crystal resonance. Carlos used his engineering skills to fine-tune the frequency. Lisa monitored the life signs to make sure they stayed healthy. The results were incredible. The heartbeats became stronger and more regular. The brain activity increased. The eggs even started to glow faintly from inside, which Zara said was a sign of healthy development. Amanda Foster watched all of this with growing amazement. She had come to shut down what she thought was a waste of resources. Instead, she was seeing something that had never been done before. How long until they hatch? Amanda asked Zara. Normally, it takes 60 days from when the eggs are laid, Zara replied. But these eggs are different now, with the crystal frequency helping them. Maybe 30 days, maybe less. Amanda made a decision that surprised everyone. I'm calling headquarters to request additional resources for this project. Jake looked shocked. "You're not shutting us down?" "Mr. Martinez, I came here thinking you were wasting company money on a foolish experiment. But this isn't just an experiment anymore. This is a breakthrough that could change everything we know about xenobiology." She looked at the 3 glowing eggs in their warming chamber. If humans can bring frozen alien eggs back to life, what else can they do? What other impossible problems can they solve? That evening, Jake found Zara sitting beside the warming chamber, humming softly. The eggs glowed brighter when she sang. "Thank you," Zara said to Jake. "You saved my children when everyone else said they were lost." Jake sat down beside her. "We all saved them. Humans, draconians, everyone working together. Why did you risk so much for us?" Zara asked. Jake thought about the question. Because family doesn't give up on family. And everyone on this station is family. As if responding to his words, the eggs pulsed with warm light. Inside, 3 baby dragons continued to grow stronger, saved by the impossible becoming possible. 6 days after the crystal frequency breakthrough, the first egg began to crack. Lisa was doing her morning check when she heard a tiny tapping sound. She looked at the warming chamber and saw a small crack appearing on the surface of the first egg. The crack was no bigger than a fingernail, but it was growing. "Jake, Carlos, everyone," Lisa shouted. "It's happening." Within minutes, the medical bay was filled with people. Workers from every species on the station crowded around the warming chamber. Zara pushed through to the front, her eyes fixed on her first baby. The tapping sound got louder. More cracks appeared. Then a tiny piece of shell fell away, and everyone could see something moving inside. "Is that normal?" Jake asked Zara quietly. "I don't know," Zara whispered back. "I've never seen a hatching before. Most draconians hatch when their mothers are alone." A baby dragon was trying to break free from its shell. Each tap made the crack bigger. Lisa watched the life sign monitors to make sure the baby was healthy. Everything looked good. Amanda Foster stood at the back of the crowd, filming everything on her communication device. "Corporate headquarters needs to see this," she told Jake. "This is going to change everything." After 2 hours of tapping and cracking, a small hole appeared in the egg. Everyone held their breath. Then a tiny snout poked through the opening. It was pale blue with silver markings, no bigger than a human thumb. Zara started crying happy tears. "Hello, my little star," she said softly. The baby dragon heard its mother's voice and pushed harder against the shell. More pieces fell away. Soon a small head appeared, then tiny wings, then a complete baby dragon about the size of a house cat. But something was different about this baby dragon. Normal draconian babies were born with dark scales that got brighter. As they grew older, this baby's scales were already bright, shimmering with colors that seemed to move and change in the light. Its eyes were larger than normal, and when it looked around the room, it seemed to see and understand more than a newborn should. "The near-death experience," Lisa said quietly, "and the human medical treatment. It changed the development somehow." The baby dragon looked at all the faces around the chamber. Its eyes stopped on Lisa, then Carlos, then Jake. It seemed to recognize them as the ones who had saved its life. "Hello, little one," Jake said gently. The baby turned toward Jake's voice and made a soft chirping sound. It was trying to communicate. Zara opened the warming chamber carefully and lifted her first baby out. The dragon was warm and healthy, bigger and stronger than normal newborns. When Zara held it close, the baby nuzzled against her and chirped happily. But then something amazing happened. The baby dragon looked at Jake and reached out one tiny wing toward him. It wanted the human who had saved it. "May I?" Jake asked Zara. Zara carefully placed the baby in Jake's hands. The dragon immediately curled up against his chest and made contented sounds. It acted like Jake was family. "I've never seen anything like this," said Keth, the draconian medical officer. "Newborn dragons usually only bond with their mothers. This one seems to think the humans are family too." Over the next few hours, the second and third eggs began hatching. Each baby that emerged was the same: bigger, brighter, and more aware than normal dragon babies. And each one seemed to recognize and trust the humans who had saved them. The second baby, with scales of deep green and gold, bonded immediately with Lisa. When she held it, the baby curled around her arm like a living bracelet and fell asleep. Third baby, silver with blue markings like its mother, chose Carlos. It perched on his shoulder and watched everything he did with intelligent eyes. "It's like they know," Carlos said in wonder. "They know we saved them." Word of the hatching spread. Beyond Kepler-7, news traveled through the galaxy's communication networks. Scientists from dozens of worlds wanted to know how humans had brought dead eggs back to life. But the most amazing part wasn't just that the babies had hatched. It was how they acted. The 3 baby dragons seemed to understand both draconian and human languages. When Zara spoke to them in her native tongue, they responded. When the humans spoke in English, they responded to that too. "They're bilingual from birth," Lisa observed. The brain development during the warming process created new neural pathways. The babies also showed abilities that surprised everyone. They could control their body temperature better than normal dragons. They seemed to sense emotions from both humans and draconians. And they learned incredibly fast. Within hours of hatching, they knew their names. Zara named them Star, Flame, and Sky. Star bonded with Jake, Flame with Lisa, and Sky with Carlos. "This is unprecedented," Amanda Foster said, as she watched the babies play with their human caregivers. "These dragons are developing abilities that could change our understanding of interspecies relationships." The babies seemed to enjoy being with both their mother and their human friends. They would curl up with Zara when they wanted comfort, but they would go to Jake, Lisa, or Carlos when they wanted to play or explore. Other species on the station were fascinated by the unusual family. The scroll workers brought gifts of shiny metals that the babies liked to play with. The crystal miners found small gems that the dragons enjoyed carrying around. Everyone on the station felt like they had been part of something special. Dr. Lisa Park became the first human to successfully revive frozen alien embryos. Carlos Webb's engineering solutions were already being studied by scientists across the galaxy. And Jake Martinez had shown that a human supervisor would risk everything to save alien children. But the most important change was in the relationships between species on the station. Seeing humans care for draconian babies like their own children had broken down barriers that had existed for years. "You know what this means?" Zara asked Jake as they watched the 3 babies playing together on the floor of the medical bay. "What?" Jake asked. "It means hope," Zara said. "If humans and draconians can raise children together, maybe all the species in the galaxy can learn to be one big family." Jake smiled as Star climbed up his leg and perched on his knee. "I think you might be right." The impossible had become possible. Dead eggs had become living babies. And the mining station had become the birthplace of a new kind of family that crossed the boundaries between species. 6 months after the hatching, Kepler-7 looked like a completely different place. The small mining station had grown into something much bigger and more important. New buildings had been built to house the scientists, doctors, and researchers who came from all over the galaxy to study what had happened there. The 3 baby dragons were no longer babies. Star, Flame, and Sky had grown to the size of large dogs. Their scales had become even more beautiful, shifting colors like living rainbows. They were smarter than anyone had expected, learning new things every day. Jake stood in his new office, which was 3 times bigger than his old one. Through the window, he could see Star playing with a group of human children who had come to the station with their scientist parents. The dragon was gentle and careful, making sure not to hurt the smaller humans with his claws or wings. Jake's job had changed too. He was no longer just a mining supervisor. His new title was Director of Interspecies Cooperation. His job was to help solve problems that other species thought were impossible. Every week, new requests came in. A species whose children were born with a rare disease. Another species whose home planet was dying. Problems that had no solutions were sent to the humans on Kepler-7 because humans had proven they could do impossible things. "Papa Jake," came a voice from behind him. Jake turned around and smiled. Star had learned to speak both Draconian and English perfectly, but the words that made Jake happiest were the ones that made him part of the family. "Hello, Star," Jake said, kneeling down so the young dragon could climb onto his lap. "How was your lesson with Dr. Park today?" "Mama Lisa taught me about heart medicine," Star said proudly. "I want to help sick people like she helped me." Lisa had started teaching all three dragons about medicine and science. They learned faster than any students she had ever had. Flame was especially good at understanding different types of alien biology. Sky loved engineering and worked with Carlos on building new machines. "Where are your brother and sister?" Jake asked. "Flame is with Mama Lisa in the medical bay. Sky is with Papa Carlos fixing the new warming chambers." Star replied. The warming chambers had become famous throughout the galaxy. Species that had lost children to accidents or disease brought them to Kepler-7. The human team had saved dozens of young aliens using the techniques they had developed, but the chambers were just part of what made Kepler-7 special. Zara walked into Jake's office carrying a stack of reports. Her job had changed too. She was now the cultural liaison officer, helping different species understand each other better. "The new families are settling in well," Zara told Jake. "The crystalline delegation from Arcturus and the plant-based species from Vega are already working together on a joint research project." Kepler-7 had become home to representatives from 47 different species. They came to learn the human approach to solving impossible problems. But they stayed because they found something they had never experienced before, a place where all species were treated like family. "Any problems?" Jake asked. "The usual small things," Zara said. "The methane-breathing species need their quarters kept colder. The silicon-based life forms need special minerals in their food, but everyone is adapting. And the children?" Zara smiled. "All the different species' children play together every day. Star, Flame, and Sky are teaching them that differences don't matter. What matters is caring for each other." A communication alert sounded in Jake's office. Amanda Foster's face appeared on the screen from corporate headquarters on Earth. "Jake, I have the quarterly reports," Amanda said. "Mining production is up 40% from last year. Research contracts are bringing in more money than the crystals ever did. The board is very pleased." "That's good news," Jake said. "But how are the families we've helped?" Amanda's expression softened. "That's the really good news. 96% of the cases we've taken on have been successful. We've saved lives that every other medical facility said were hopeless." Amanda had become one of the strongest supporters of the Kepler-7 project. After seeing the dragon hatching, she understood that some things were more valuable than profit margins. "There's something else," Amanda continued. "The Galactic Council wants to make Kepler-7 an official interspecies cooperation center. They want to fund expansion to help even more species." Jake felt proud, but also worried. "We don't want to lose what makes this place special." "Don't worry," Amanda said. "The plan is to train other humans to work at similar stations throughout the galaxy, spreading the Kepler-7 approach, not replacing it." That evening, Jake and his extended family gathered in the main dining hall for dinner. The table was enormous. to accommodate the different sizes and eating needs of various species. Zara sat with her 3 children, who had grown into remarkable young dragons. Lisa and Carlos sat nearby with their own adopted alien children, young beings whose lives they had saved using human medical techniques. Representatives from dozens of species shared the meal, talking and laughing together. Children of different species played between the tables, including human children who spoke multiple alien languages fluently. "Papa Jake," said Sky, the silver and blue dragon, "can you tell us the story again?" "Which story?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "The story about the day Mama brought us to you when we were frozen," said Flamme, the green and enfant. "Gold dragon. And you decided to save us, even though everyone said it was impossible," added Star. Jake looked around the table at all the faces, human, draconian, and dozens of other species. All of them were there because humans had refused. To accept that impossible meant hopeless. "Once upon a time," Jake began, "there was a brave mother who brought her frozen babies to a human supervisor, even though she was scared, and everyone told her there was no hope. The children of all species gathered around to listen to the story. They had heard many times, but never got tired of hearing. The humans looked at those frozen eggs and said the most important words in any language," Jake continued. "They said, 'We'll find a way.'" As Jake told the story, he realized that the most incredible thing that had happened wasn't bringing dead eggs back to life. It wasn't even creating a new kind of interspecies family. The most incredible thing was proving that when beings care for each other like family, there are no impossible problems. There are only problems that haven't been solved yet. And in a galaxy full of different species learning to work together, that was the most important lesson of all.